I have been so happy today to be able to hear from leaders who care about the future of healthcare, who work with lots of other groups. And I personally really love people who are making a difference in technology. And we want to welcome you to this really important discussion about artificial intelligence. And we know that it has the possibility of transforming the clinical experience, whether that turns out to be something good or a challenge for your organization can really depend on great leadership. Stephanie Hines, CIO of Valleywise Healthcare and long-term leader in this space, is sitting down with another veteran, Dr. Ed Lee, who is the Chief Medical Officer at Nabla Technologies, a company that is at the forefront of AI for healthcare. They are also a proud sponsor of our event, and we really want to thank them. So go check out their little booth. Please leave comments. Let Dr. Lee know what you think. And we're going to talk today about how leaders can align technology adoption with the goal of reducing administrative burden. So they'll talk about real world examples of artificial intelligence powered documentation to strategies for bringing IT, clinical teams, and executives to the same table, and how to lead those conversations. And we'll look at how the right leadership decisions make a difference in that space. And they really are leaders that personify that artificial intelligence can be a tool for healing the system, not for straining it. We also want to mention that we're proud to partner with Nabla this year, and that they are on a mission to restore the human connection at the heart of healthcare through industry-leading clinical artificial intelligence. Their ambient artificial intelligence assistant transforms live patient conversations into structured notes with clinical-grade accuracy and intuitive interface for fast adoption. Because as we know, the tool that gets adopted is the tool you need. So clinicians can benefit from using Nabla and benefit from their built-in dictation and medical coding support across all specialties. And many of them save up to 2 hours per day. And people get to spend more time with patients, which is really what we want. They're working across 35 languages and 55 specialties, supporting both in-person and telehealth visits. So we want to please welcome, leave a comment, let us know if you've had experience with this or what you think about artificial intelligence documentation. Introduce yourself to Dr. Lee and Stephanie Hines, and thank you so much for being part of this today.
I'm glad that we could be talking this morning to talk about, artificial intelligence, transforming everything that we do nowadays and how it relates to helping with clinician well-being and reducing burnout, and the potential it has in everything that we're doing today.
Absolutely.
Maybe I'll start by asking you a question. And, I think you've done a lot and you've led major system-wide technology transitions at Valleywise Health, including large-scale EHR implementations, and, where even well-intended upgrades can either meaningfully streamline workflow or unintentionally add friction to clinicians. And my question to you, though, is what have been the most important lessons in making sure new digital initiatives always actually reduce clinician burden rather than increasing it?
Yeah, I think, over time we've gotten a lot better. When you go back 15 to 20 years and you look at some of the early implementations, it was a lot of, hey, these are the things we have to do. It was very focused on, leveraging technology for more of that administrative purposes. Now we're in a space, especially with AI, where we're really looking to transform the experience in different ways and to solve some very pressing problems that we have today with staffing, with burnout, with people leaving the industry. So, a lot has changed. There's one thing that I don't think, has changed in that time frame, and that is, keeping the mindset of don't be a solution looking for a problem. And I think in many cases people do that, right? I've got this cool technology. Hey, I just went to a conference. This vendor had X, and we want to do well and we want to do good by the business, but sometimes technology has taken a a little bit more of a front seat in that conversation. If we cannot be a solution looking for a problem and really make sure that we're listening and we understand where those pain points are, and we are bringing that technology, bringing those opportunities, to bear in a solution-oriented conversation with our partners, we're always going to be on the right track, because we're going to be solving the things that people feel. As clinicians, we don't walk into a patient room and ask someone what's hurting and then decide to go do something else. We listen to that patient, and we make sure that, we are bringing things to bear that improve that experience. And it is our providers and nurses that are our business. So I think keeping that as the guiding light and principle, that helps us stay on track, so that we're not adding things that feel burdensome and actually detract from the objective of, improving the experience.
Completely agree, Stephanie. That's right along with how I'm thinking as well.
Yeah. So, from across the different health systems you worked with, you have a very, wide experience. What are the common factors that have really driven successful implementations of AI in clinical settings? What are you seeing as the things that really transcend multiple clients and different types of organizations that we need to keep in mind?
It's a great question, Stephanie. And I've found that no matter the size of the organization that you're working with, smaller health clinic, large enterprise systems, and multi-states, if you stick with a few foundational principles, you'll be able to drive results when it comes to implementations. And I call it the three Ps: problem, planning, and partnership. And you hit on the first one already in terms of the problem, like clearly defining the clinical problem. It shouldn't be, as you mentioned, sort of, let's do something with AI. It should instead be, hey, our doctors spend too much time documenting, and we need to decrease that burden by a couple hours a day. When you start with the problem that clinicians actually care about, adoption follows naturally, because the technology is solving the pain point that they feel every day. The second P is planning, going slow to go fast. And what I mean is that you need to map out the steps that are needed to maximize your investment. That can include things like conducting pilots, defining success criteria, setting up monitoring systems to ensure data quality, and establishing the proper governance structures. And of course, last but not least, being thoughtful about workflow design and workflow integration. It may feel slow in the beginning when you're going through this process, but you'll be glad in the end as you get further down your implementation and you're looking to scale. And the last P is partnership. It's partnership within your organization and outside your organization. So within, it's engaging all the right stakeholders so that you have organizational alignment, where you have clinicians and IT, legal and compliance, and senior leadership all working together towards a common same goal. And then outside your organization, it's your vendor partners. And part of that goes back to the P, the planning stage, where you ensure you're working with the right vendor. And you'll know it's right when you find one that's listening to you, understanding your needs, and then co-developing new solutions and having partners who iterate with you and truly engage as a partner.
Yeah, I love that. Strategy beats speed every time. And I think in a world of, I want to hurry up and I want to be the first, and these are large investments for healthcare systems, and taking that approach and being thoughtful and mindful, I think gets you the win in the end. So really being clear on what you're trying to accomplish, that's great.
Yeah, absolutely right. Stephanie, let me ask you another one here. So burnout got major implications, not only for clinicians personally, but for workforce stability and organizational performance. How can health systems build a stronger business case for investing in clinician well-being, and which metrics actually resonate with executive leadership?
Yeah, I think you hit on it. And when we look at some of these tools, because of how we've looked at technology in the past in healthcare, we always kind of naturally gravitate to efficiency. Is this going to make me faster? Is this going to, help me do more? And, we really have to pivot from that. And when we look at staffing, when we look at, the providers that we're going to need to take care of the population that we have, the recruitment and retention metrics and costs have to be at the forefront of those conversations. So, if you're looking at things like ambient, don't go down the path of, can I squeak one more patient in during the day? You really got to go down the path of, on the low end, it's going to cost you, $250,000 to recruit a new provider. And that's not even really thinking about, some of the specialties or a lot in the lost revenue space if you're not able to take care of the patients that you need to, and not being able to deliver to your communities the care that they're seeking from your health system. So, really focusing on that. The other thing too is, we're a business that's about taking care of people, and our employees are, and the physicians that we work with, they are people we need to take care of. And COVID put that on a stage. People that are not part of our industry really got to see, the impacts of what is going on. And in that case, in many scenarios, we pulled back on some of the administrative burden that those folks are feeling. So as we look at investing in these technologies, we have to keep our foot on the gas, or on the pedal of that work. We can't let a pandemic be the only time that we're trying to move forward in terms of improving that experience, so that we're taking care of those people. They get to go home at night, spend time with their family, get adequate sleep. They come into work, they do a better job. They connect better with patients. The patient experience is so heavily predicated on, how did I feel? Did I feel like my caregiver was listening to me? Did I feel like my caregiver, cared about my experience, and I wasn't just another person in the day? Those are the things that get high satisfaction scores, that drive, strong lifetime value of that consumer. So being able to tether all those things together, some of that's hard to do and hard to quantify, but I think, we're experiencing this at such a great level. The data's there. We have to look at the whole picture and not get, mired in what kind of efficiency is this technology going to provide us.
That again resonates so well with how I think as well. It's hard to take care of others until you take care of yourself. We've heard that time and time again. And the other thing is, patients don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so all these technology, I think, are supporting both of those concepts there.
Yeah. I'm really interested in what kind of guidance that you would provide, CMIOs or CIOs in assessing some of the AI tools that are out there. What is clinically sound? What is sustainable in a space where everybody's hanging a shingle and there's lots of stuff out there? How do you kind of make it through the sea of offerings and make wise choices?
Yeah, it's not easy, but I talk to CMIOs and CIOs all the time around this, and it's because the pace of AI innovation right now is just incredible. But that also means that leaders are being asked to evaluate tools faster than ever. But I think the key is to balance the urgency with rigor. There's a temptation to move fast, and I talked about that earlier, and everyone's feeling that pressure. But when it comes to clinical AI, how you move matters just as much as how fast you move. And I start with three principles again here. And first is thinking about whether or not a technology solution is clinically meaningful. Going back to the first P, does it solve a real problem, or is it meaningfully improving safety, quality, efficiency? And if it doesn't change patient care or reduce burden, it's probably not worth the effort. Then I also think about transparency and governance, and you really should know how a model was trained, what data was used, how it performs across different populations, and you need a way to monitor that over time, because models drift, bias creeps in, and putting a structure around all that and making sure that you have visibility around that is critically important as well. And then finally, can a technology scale responsibly? Some tools look great in pilots, but when you integrate it into the EHR or you roll it out across multiple departments, there may be weekly or daily slowness or downtimes. And the ones that are reliable, that are resilient and sustainable, those are the best solutions to adopt into your workflows. And that allows building of patient and clinician trust. And they need to also evolve with your data, with your people, and within your organization.
Yeah, I love that. It's a lot to make your way through, but I think having a framework and a methodology and communicating that ahead of time, because it's not just us that are going out and seeing tools. It is the business is out, physicians are out, nurses are out, everyone's coming, with things to evaluate and identify. And I think the more that we can talk about, how we go about that process and the concerns or the perils of jumping on something just because it looks shiny in a booth, can certainly be a path you don't want to go down.
Yeah, but Stephanie, like even the most capable tools, though, won't deliver impact if the clinicians don't believe that they're going to help them in their practice. So how do you build trust and buy-in so clinicians feel technology is there to support their care rather than replace or monitor them?
Yeah, I think we have a theme here, and that is by solving the pain points. Again, when people feel heard and understood, that is a partnership. And when you've got your technical experts, when you've got your people that are providing the care, that is a collective intelligence that is incredibly powerful if it is done together. So, solving those pain points, I think also being transparent, in years past, I think, as we've pushed technology in the healthcare industry, some things kind of end up in scenarios where either you're being told or you're being sold. And, that's not a great feeling. That doesn't promote partnership. And, there are things we have to do. There are real challenges, real problems that we have to solve. There's regulations that we have to stay within. So really being transparent on, what's the playground looking like right now? What do we have to do to be successful and to take care of patients? And being transparent around the fact that with AI and with the I'm not even going to call it an evolution, it's a revolution. With the revolution that is coming, it is going to happen. We can partner and we can capitalize on that to be able to do what we do more effectively, or we can be left behind. And, I think in those honest conversations, that's where trust is built, and you can come to the table together to solve the problems in ways that make sense. We also have to keep clinicians in the loop. And I don't mean just the communication loop, but the loop of how these tools are used. We are ultimately responsible for what we are doing with our patients and making sure that we are building, workflows or, introducing capabilities that, continue to promote the right oversight and involvement of clinicians in that work. When we start looking at what we're doing and the return on investment. I feel like we almost have to get into a space where we are doing the financial return on investment or, providing the information that helps the business to understand what we're doing and the efficacy of that, but also starting to get into communicating the human return on investment alongside that. Those are the things I think if we do that well, we're going to have trust. We're going to have, folks bought into the work that we're doing. And we don't get into a situation of fear where those that are providing care, believe there's a big brother that, has nefarious objectives and break that relationship down.
Yeah, I love that. This technology, it's not going away. It's just going to be ever more present. I remember earlier on when ChatGPT just got first introduced, I remember how there were some saying, hey, we can't use this. We got to block it. It's too dangerous to use. But, thinking back and looking forward, there is that danger of being left behind. So we all need to learn to grow and to invest and to move forward with this technology. Otherwise, we will be left behind.
Yeah. you know, as we look at deploying this technology, obviously the way that we're working and the way that we're training our future workforce has to shift with it. How do you think that medical training needs to evolve to prepare the nurses and providers of the future to leverage these technologies? How in a future where they're handling those routine tasks and these competencies become more essential. How do you see us training them? And then I also want to kind of go back to the what if something is unavailable? How are we also training them to function if for some reason that technology is not available to them in the moment? Most of us that worked in the days of paper, if a system's not available or something is down, it's very easy for us to go grab a sheet of paper and write an order or take a telephone order or go back to what we were trained to do initially. And I see in an academic, where we have a teaching facility here, they don't have that experience to pull from. So how are we preparing them to be successful in using the tools and then also being able to do their job, potentially in absence of them?
It's such a great question. I think about this all the time, being a faculty member at a medical school. And it's really actually one of the most exciting questions in medical education right now. AI is taking on more and more of the routine tasks like writing notes and replying to patient messages, summarizing charts. And, the thing is, I think the role of the clinician becomes even more important as these technologies come in. The future of medical education, it's not going to be about knowing more facts. It's about knowing how to think with technology in the room. And students need to understand enough about AI to question it intelligently. When can I trust this output? When should I override it? And it doesn't mean that everyone should go through a clinical informatics fellowship, but it does mean that there needs to be integration of data literacy, ethical reasoning, clinical and critical appraisal right into clinical training. At the same time, I think human skills are even more important. Communication, empathy, teamwork. We often call those sort of the soft skills, but I don't think that does it justice, because those really are sort of the new core competencies. And as AI takes over routine work, the value of the clinician is accentuated in the areas of things like interpretation and connection and judgments in context. And those are all, super important. Back to the other point of, hey, if there is a downtime and the system isn't available, that's, really important in terms of there are concepts to consider here around that we need to safeguard against. So the idea of something called never skilling, where AI introduced so early, students, they never build the critical competencies at all. There is the concept of de-skilling, where learners lose the skills that they once had because they're so reliant on AI. And then there's the idea of mis-skilling, where AI outputs are either biased or wrong, and people take the AI output as truth, and now we're doing things in the wrong way. So if we are at least aware of all those different concepts, we can now build systems and train our future workforce and future clinicians to try to be able to safeguard against that and to be in a position to still perform despite those potential pitfalls.
Yeah, I love that. Just a follow up on that, as we see the younger workforce, coming in, the folks who have grown up with technology in their hands, what are you seeing shift in, adoption, understanding, and even creativity around how tools can be used, maybe from what we saw 20 years ago with people who, learned technology, more as adults?
Yeah, I know. As we call them, the digital natives, these students that are going through their educational training now, they're not only digital natives, pretty soon enough, they're going to be AI natives. And so there are going, and I have such tremendous hope for this upcoming generation, because they will not only have the technology in place their entire education, they're going to be able the ones who understand it better than any of us, and then really understand the potential of where it will take us in the future, where I think it will, drive all the things that we're looking for in the quadruple aim of improving patient quality, decreasing costs, improving the patient experience, improving the clinician experience, all those things that are going to be made better by the fact that they will be able to leverage this technology better than you and I, as well as those that have been working closely with this right here and now.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, I think we're at the part of the session here where we're just going to ask some really quick questions and get 1 or 2 sentence answers here, our rapid fire questions, Stephanie. So let me ask you this. What is one leadership principle that you return to when decisions get complex?
It's a simple answer, but listening. Being a student of someone else's experience, because, I think a lot of the overcomplication that we tend to introduce into some decisions, especially in an industry that is complicated, is due to lack of understanding. So, listening and making sure you're not listening to respond, but you're actually hearing, what that person is saying, and you are crunching on that, because that then becomes the platform for simplifying things that might be overly complex.
Love it. Thanks for that.
All right. What is one way your clinical background shapes how you make technology decisions today?
Well, I always start by asking, is this going to improve patient care? Or is it going to make it easier for clinicians to provide that high quality, personalized care that we all want to deliver? And, if the answer is yes, then, we're on the right track. Stephanie, let me ask you one more here. And looking ahead, what gives you the most hope about the role of technology in supporting the people who deliver care?
I think you touched on it a little bit, and I love how you framed core competencies, empathy, connection, getting back to the relationship that happens in that care experience. I think automation is going to liberate us from some of the administrative tasks that have been in the way of doing that more. So I'm very hopeful that, what we're introducing is just going to return more of that time back to the patient and help revive some of the, historical experiences people had of really being able to connect with their caregiver without a computer in the face or feeling rushed.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Last one here. What change in the clinician experience do you most hope AI will make possible in the next few years? So what's in your crystal ball?
Well, so when you ask physicians if they had to do it all over again, would they choose to go back into medicine? Or would they recommend their children pursue a career as a doctor? And, unfortunately, too often the answer is no. And my hope is that AI changes that. And it gives clinicians back the time that they need to connect, and as you say, to listen, and to rediscover the joy that drew them into medicine in the first place. I think AI has the absolute potential to do that, and I'm excited to see how that will play out in the next few years.